A lot of the talk around the town is Hendon Hooker, and I get it because Hendon Hooker has not been good. And I was always trying to tell people over the course of whenever it was, I said, look, if you're expecting Hendon Hooker to be a starter, you might be disappointed. If you think that Hendon Hooker is going to be the superstar quarterback, like a Mahomes, like a Jaden Daniels, like a Lamar Jackson, you're vastly underrating. You're vastly overrating him. And I've watched a lot of this football at Tennessee, and there's things I love about Hendon Hooker. There was things I didn't like about Hendon Hooker. I thought it was a waste of a draft pick because we all knew he was going to be injured for the first year. So when you think about injuries and you think about basically an injured year off, I mean, it's basically like you're taking him for the second, third, and fourth year. We're in the third year, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. And a lot of people are asking, is Hendon Hooker done? Is Hendon done? And I just say, like, I look at it like this. I never thought Hendon Hooker would be this transcendent quarterback. I never thought he would be this fantastic quarterback. I wanted him to be a good backup quarterback. But as we look at the statistics, I mean, some of the statistics that are advanced statistics, you get into the groove of thinking that he might not be a backup quarterback either. So Dan Campbell spoke about why he took him off the field before the end of the half. Usually Hooker would go to the end of the first half and then Allen would start the second half. He said, look, you can decide you're going to be a runner. You got to tuck it away, man. He said, Dan Campbell said, Hendon Hooker was pulled before the first half was over because of his two fumbles. And what's interesting about Hendon Hooker is not that he's fumbling. Not that he's fumbling. You got to think about it like this. He's been kept clean on 60% of his dropbacks. He's been not blitzed on 76% of his dropbacks. Even that being said, 26 dropbacks, 16 attempts, 10 completions. So he's attempted 16 passes, 10 completions. There's only six out of 26 dropbacks. He's completed only 10 of them. That means there's 16 that have hit the ground. The P2S percentage, that's a pass turned into a sack percentage. Now, the reason I bring that up is because when you look at a guy like Jared Goff, right? We all talk about Jared Goff and we say, this guy is not mobile. Jared Goff isn't a mobile quarterback. What I want you to focus on is when you have a mobile quarterback like Hendon Hooker, sometimes he uses his legs to get out of the situations that he should be looking for the pass. Like there's certain times that when I watch him, there's a pass that he can make right in the flat, or he can make right over the middle, that are just right there. But he wants to take off and run, and the pressure turned into a sack is basically what you know. When you look at like a guy like Lamar Jackson, when you look at a guy like Jaden Daniels, when you look at a guy like Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, when they get pressure, does the pressure turn to a sack, or do they get the ball off? Do they make good plays? And last year, Jared Goff, this is a statistic that you should take to your bank. Throughout his career, his pressure turned into a sack is 14.9. With Hendon, this preseason, it's 30%. Now, I want you to just think about it like this. 14.5% from a guy largely casted off as he's not mobile, Jared Goff. And then you have a guy like Hendon Hooker, who is extremely mobile, but his pressure turned into a sack is 30%. Now, the worst quarterbacks in the NFL are around 28% to 32%. I believe Bryce Young in the first part of the year was at like 37%. So when you're at a 30% clip, you are already in that horrible trajectory. And I just butchered the hell out of that. But when you think about pressure turned to a sack, and then you think about he's been kept clean on 60% of his dropbacks, 76% of his dropbacks, he's been not blitz either. Okay. He's had 3 turnover worthy throws when he's not blitz. He's been kept clean. He had a turnover worthy throw once when he was kept clean, and 2 under pressure, which 2 under pressure, I mean, it's 18%, but it's still not great. The thing about it is, when you think about Hendon Hooker, a lot of people were sold a bill of goods. They were just sold a bill of goods. And, you know, for whatever reason, you can think that Hendon Hooker was going to be the eventual starter, which was nonsense from the beginning. Um, as someone who's watched him at Tennessee, I could strictly tell you that he has brilliant parts of his game. Brilliant parts of his game. But the thing that you got to understand about Tennessee's offense is, if you're a Michigan fan, you remember Joe Milton. You probably do. He went to Tennessee, looked pretty good. Hendon Hooker went to Tennessee after being at Virginia Tech, looked Heisman worthy. And the thing about Josh Heupel's offense is it's very easy for a quarterback to make reads. And I look at Hendon Hooker and I'm watching him and I'm watching him in the preseason and I'm looking at him and he's just not making the right reads. Some of the passes that we kind of expect him to make, he's just not seeing it. And it's because he hasn't been in that type of offense. I mean, in this type of offense with the Detroit Lions, you got to anticipate the throw. You just got to anticipate the throw. And when you have a guy like Hendon Hooker who isn't making the right reads, he can't anticipate where the guys are going. And by the time he does, he's getting himself into trouble. And it's not all his fault because it's a hard offense to learn, but he's got to be a lot better. And he's going to have the second half of next week, likely the first half of the last week, the last preseason game against the Texans, and he's going to have a shot. But the reality of the situation is, under no circumstances has Hendon Hooker been any good. And I feel for people who believe that he was going to be, the next starter for the Detroit Lions, but I've been watching this kid since he was at Tennessee, and he's got great glimpses of his game. But there's parts of his game that don't match up with the Detroit Lions, and they don't match up with NFL football. If I post a Facebook status on my personal page, I go, look, if you'd have told me Joe Milton would be the better prospect at this time than Hendon Hooker as a Tennessee fan, I would have told you you're nuts. But sometimes it's a matter of circumstance, and sometimes it's a matter of skill. There's no doubting that Hendon Hooker has a great skill set. But when you look at Joe Milton, I mean, he was just raw. Even every Michigan fan could tell you the kid had an arm. He can make all the throws. He was just wholly inaccurate. And him being in a pro system, maybe they fixed some of the inaccuracies to make him just a good player, a good backup, because he's backing up for Dak Prescott right now. So the Patriots did a good job of getting him in there, put him in the right system and making sure that he can get better. But Hendon Hooker has been the exact opposite. This kid has been, he's virtually talented. He's talented as all hell, but it's the system that he's in. This anticipate and throw system. In college it was reactionary. He knew what guy he was going to at all times, and that receiver would be open because it was a one read system. And if you know the one read system, it's similar to what they did at Baylor with Art Briles. Josh Heupel was, that's where he got the offense from. So, like, you watch this year with Tennessee, like, they have Joey Aguilar as a quarterback, and he was a terrible quarterback where he was before, but he might be a good quarterback with the Tennessee Volunteers because the offense is so dummy proof that you just have to make the right throw to the right receiver, and that's your first read. You're not going to your second read. You're not going to your third read. And I think that's where Hendon Hooker has the most trouble, is once your first read's gone, where do you go to your second read? Where do you go to your third read? Where do you go to your fourth read? Jared Goff was recently talking to 97 Ticket, and he said, look, I've had to get better at going to my third and fourth read quicker. This is a guy who's been starting. He went to the Super Bowl, went to many NFC Championship games, and he's saying, look, I had to make the reads quicker. And sometimes it takes a little while. And for Hooker, I mean, he doesn't have that little while. He's not going to get a chance to make plays at meaningful times if he doesn't get better in practice, doesn't get better in preseason. And if you read all the articles from today, I mean, he was put on a third team offense. So that shows you where the quarterback competition for backup is going. And I find it really hard to believe that Hooker will make it up. But there's been stranger occurrences, and I think this is still an open backup competition. I think it would take Allen to fall on flat on his face, but we've seen stranger things in the preseason. So we'll see what happens here with the Detroit Lions and Hendon Hooker. But look, Hendon has to be Hendon. I don't know where the Hendon Hooker went from Tennessee, but he's not the same guy. I don't know what changed in his mind, but he's trying to be. I always joked that he was Apple Goff. It seems like he's trying to be Goff with the legs, and it's just not working. Be Hendon Hooker. Make those throws. Like Campbell said, you got to anticipate. You got to anticipate the throw, and that's what he's got to do. But we'll see what happens with it. There's 2 more preseason games left. This is an open competition in my mind. I don't think the backup quarterback positions changed in any place because I look at these 2 guys. There's not much to be like, oh yeah, it's done over with. I wish that was the case, but Brett Holmes picked Kyle Allen. He picked Hendon Hooker to be the backup quarterbacks, and we'll see what happens from there. This is Joe Chapp of the Detroit Lions News Podcast on your sports YouTube page. We'll see you in the next one.